Hello. Hey, welcome everyone. I am so excited to um, start our next Shiro series. My name is Savang Chom. I am one of the Khmer Gender Justice at Freedom Inc. here. My pronoun is she, her, hers. I have the greatest honor to introduce and to start us out with our Shiro series. So today we have a group of uh, amazing women that are doing, we're going to be talking in the front line for, fighting for us to the right for us to stay. So it's about deportation and immigration tonight. And the reason why we are doing our Shiro, because, our director Kaja always thought that we never had any like Asian heroes to put on, to show off, right? So she decided, like there are some amazing Southeast Asian women out there, and we so she decided to launch this, without even like, I know that she thought about it a couple years ago, and this has been years of planning, and this year we made it happen. So so these are like the t-shirt that I'm wearing. So this is the Shiro. You see them right here. Yeah, so tonight I have the honor to also introduce our moderator, um, Chaya Chaum, the Queen of Cambodia leaders. I am so honored. Chaya was the co-founder of Mekong NYC in the Bronx in New York. She's also now is the executive director there. Chaya is well known locally, internationally. She, when she was like, she came here as a refugee, live in the Philippines, and at the age of 16, man, she is out there fighting for her communities, doing some translation. She is a fighter. She has been done documentary, Eat Welfare, well known for that. She's done deportation work and also, travel around the world to talk about gender-based violence. So I am so excited to hear and also to just having fun today, right? And to acknowledge, especially March is International Women's Month, and we want to acknowledge all of the women's and heroes out there. And here is a group of amazing Southeast Asian women who are doing work on deportation, immigration. So I am gonna hand over to Chaya, and we'll get started. So welcome, y'all.
Hello, everybody. Good evening from the East Coast. Good afternoon to the West Coast folks. I know the sun is setting in the West Coast, and I hope you've had dinner, Midwest people. And so, thank you, Savang, for that introduction. And we are as big as our people love us, and that we love our people as big as that. So, I'm glad that tonight, we are starting a conversation about detention deportation. And I think this is the last of the Shiro series. Is that correct, Freedom Inc. fam? And so, oh yeah, we had to schedule another one. And so I just wanted to take a moment to really share with all of you and sit with all of you for a minute around what has happened last week. And I just want us to be reminded. And so if folks can lean into the breathing. I know that, the panelists are all scared, nervous. They have nothing to be nervous about because we are among families and friends and we only speak the truth. And so I want to acknowledge that last week we might have felt pretty numb about what happened, and that we are all probably sitting in pain in a different way, and that this week is probably the hardest week. And if we know anything about trauma and triggers, we also know how to survive it, because our people have and we have, right? So I ask that folks who've joined us tonight and folks on the panelists, and our family, whoever's in the house with you, to just take a moment to take that deep breath and release that energy, because that pain is real. Um, and hopefully in this conversation tonight, that the Shiro who will be joining us, one, they're dope, right? Two, they've been in this work for a very long time. Three, they're absolutely beautiful. Four, they really love their people. And so I hope that they will remind you that we exist, our organization exists because anti-Asian violence have always existed in this country and even before we came here. So I hope that they can also remind us that it is systemic, it is rooted in many, many systems, in violence, in patriarchy, in white supremacy, a system that every day tell us we are not worth it. And so I hope that the voices of the women tonight um, will bring you into some calming space, some revolutionary space, and some radical love about the work that we're doing. So I want to first introduce our first speaker. Um, and you all know her very, very well. And so Miss Kaying Yang is a social justice advocate, and I'm gonna read all of your bio because I want to live in all of your presence, in all of your being, and all of that you've done for our people. Kaying is a social justice advocate who has built and led community development efforts in the United States and in Asia. And 20 years ago, Kaying began her career as a community organizer and nonprofit leaders providing social services and advocacy to refugees and immigrants. And nationally and globally, Kaying worked in coalition with civil rights groups and international development agencies such as the International Organization for Migration and International Finance Corporation to address educational, economic, and gender inequities. And in the last decade, Kaying has intensified her work around ending gender based violence and creating gender equity through movement building among the Southeast Asian refugee and immigrant diaspora. I am a product of her work. Southeast Asian refugees and immigrant diaspora since forever. So, and related to the work in 2008, she founded the first Hmong women organization in Laos, which helped women and girls to access educational and economic opportunities. 2013, she became the co-founder and president of Red River Greens, a social enterprise working with women and girls in the Mekong region to build sustainable community. She is also a founder of Maive PAC in 2016, the first Hmong American Women's Political Action Committee. And today she is director of programs for the Coalition of Asian American Leaders. She is also a recipient of the 2019 Bush Fellowship from the Bush Foundation. So welcome, Kaying. And so as you say hi to us, I hope that you say hi to us and also wanted to you to quickly share with us what is heavy in your heart right now and what have brought you joy today.
Thank you so much, Chaya, for reading my bio. It sounds so much better coming from you. You are so eloquent and just full of um, spice and life all the time. So thank you so much, Chaya. And I'm always very honored to be here with everyone today. A lot is, is heavy in my heart. Of course, the Atlanta shooting, the ongoing um, racism against Asian Americans. I know that's been going on since I was a child, since I landed here in this country, living in the Midwest, getting egged on all the time, getting called gook every day. But recently, also the murder of the three Hmong women, by their partners. And, just really very concerned about the ongoing domestic violence in our community, the gender-based violence that we experience, as a community.
Mm.
But what brings me joy is this event. I've been looking forward to this
Yeah.
event all day, to be in sisterhood with my Khmer sisters,
Mm.
and to really have this opportunity to share this space and this opportunity to just discuss the work that we're all doing that is so important for our brothers and sisters who are at risk of being deported to
Mm.
countries that were our parents' birth countries. So many things, but always a light at the end of the tunnel. And so just very pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Kaying. Joy. I think we're all trying to figure that out. And thank you for sharing that because it is often amazing to be in sisterhood with all of you. Savang Lam is our next person, Shero, and she is a Cambodian refugee and survivor of the Cambodian genocide. And for the past 16 years, Savang has worked in roles concerned with program management, management of collaborative entities, nonprofit development, evaluation projects, organizational development, including strategic planning, community organizing, that includes youth organizing, policy, and advocacy work. And Savang is currently the resource coordinator at the Khmer Anti-Deportation Advocacy Group in Washington State, advocating and supporting and providing resources for community members who are unfairly targeted by ICE with final orders of removal, who are in detentions or up for deportation. She also serves as the vice chair for the Cambodian American Community Council in Washington, fund development manager for the United Cambodian American Network, and board of director with the Khmer Arts Academy the Khmer Language Art and Culture Academy. Welcome, Savang. I invite you to come on to also share the question of is this amazing, dope woman, but also, what is heavy on your heart, but also what is it that's bringing you joy?
Hi again, everyone. My name is Savong Lam, and thank you for that awesome introduction, Chaya. I go by she, her, and hers, and I am married to my high school sweetheart, Matthew Lamb, and we have 4 amazing children.
Yes.
And, just shout out to my kids. Hi, Perla, Matthias, Mateo, Makayo. Hi.
Hi, all the aunties want to say hi too.
Yeah. Wow. What's heavy on my heart, started, of course, last week with the shooting. And it's hard because it's still difficult for me to process. And, I just think about, I think it was just the reaction of the law enforcement at the time, and just, again, making another excuse, for what happened. And so that's been really heavy on my heart. And I think for me personally, what's been heavy on my heart is just my health, and making me think about reevaluating myself, and making sure that we remind ourselves that we need to take care of each other as women. I think as women, we try so hard to juggle everything and do everything, and we feel guilty when we don't, get to do everything. So I just want I need to remind myself, and also remind all of us, that we need to be there for one another, empower each other, and support one another. And again, the joy was me looking forward to this event. I'm going to admit it, I was definitely nervous about it, but I really was looking forward to it. Just sharing the space with amazing Southeast Asian women, my Khmer sisters. It's a blessing and it's an honor, and thank you. So, yeah.
Thank you, Savang. Looking forward to our conversation tonight. Yes, the sisterhood, and finding joy and loving all of us and each of us, and bringing your kids in. Yes, all of that. Our next panelist, or Shero tonight, is no other than Manta Chaum. She is a co-founder and executive director. Yes, she may have my name, my last name. She is my maybe my sister from another mother. Is the co-founder and executive director of Release Minnesota 8. She is from St. Paul, Minnesota, and currently resides in Rosemount, Minnesota, with her husband, 4 beautiful children, and a dog. All of a sudden, she loves dog now. Manta was born in Khao Dang, a refugee camp located in Thailand, and after her family fled the genocide and civil war in Cambodia. And at the age of 4, her family migrated to the United States, where Manta now calls home. Her advocacy work began in August of 2016, when her youngest brother and 7 other Cambodians, Minnesotans, were detained by the U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement, aka ICE, in an effort to find impacted families. Community organizers in an effort to really find justice for her family, like Manta really worked with other impacted families, community organizers, and co-created the Release Minnesota 8 campaign before it became an organization. And so Manta is known for her work in the areas of deportation defense, grassroots organizing, civic engagement, cross-racial solidarity, youth leadership, violence prevention, court advocacy, and system navigation. And above all things, that family is everything to Manta, and that this is why she's very passionate about helping other families in crisis. And in her free time, Manta enjoys quality time with family, friends over good food, laughs, and board game. And I have been in the presence of Manta to enjoy all of those things with her. And so I want to invite Manta to come on screen and share with us what's heavy in your heart and what's bringing you joy tonight.
Well, hi everybody. I'm gonna start with joy because you hear Pokely.
Yeah, I know. We didn't know you like dogs, but apparently you do. But here we are.
I talked about it before where I said I hated dogs, and then all of a sudden, COVID, and I just fell in love. And actually, today marks a year since we've gotten him. So it brings me a lot of joy. Also, being with you all brings me a lot of joy. I love Kaying. She's our OG, right? And well, you're an OG too, but we talk about OGs. My OG sister Kaying, I love when you can be on a panel with her. Also brings you a lot of joy. And yeah, just the heaviness of everything that's been going on. Both of our sisters previously talked about that, and you talked about it. It's just very sad. We think about all the issues that have been going on with our parents. Before we, just the heartache that they went through to get us here, and then to come here and continue to, go through the same type of violence here. And so seeing the women being murdered, and then, like Ying mentioned, the Hmong women, and then lately too, I'm thinking a lot about my parents. And so, yeah, just a lot of heaviness around it too. But I'm just really excited to be here with you all. So thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you.
All right. I mean, reading this bio, like I feel so alive, like to see all of you. But we all know each other, but it's really insane to like read the bio and be like, these are people that I know. So I know these people. So thank you for that, Manta. And last but not least, someone who I work very closely with, someone who's called New York her home for a very long time, but still thinks she's from California. So I'm gonna give her that. Sochita Meng is the director of the Southeast Asian Defense Project. So she is a Cambodian refugee as well, who arrived in the U.S. with her family in the early 80s. And for the past 15 years, she has focused on advocating for more just immigration, criminal, legal, and economic justice policy for low-income immigrants and communities of color in New York, such as funding universal legal representation for immigrants in detention, reforming New York's drug law, and establishing employment protection for New York's farm worker. And so she previously worked at the New York City Council, the Community Food Advocates, and the New York affiliate of ACLU. So she is the board chair of Mekong NYC. This is why she is more than a sister to me. She graduated from the University of Chicago, Kings County College, and Brooklyn Law School. And I would call Sochi my lawyer, my friend, my sister, and my eating partner. So Sochi, I invite you to also come on and share with us, like, what is heavy in your heart and what is bringing you joy today?
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Since you left us to be in the West Coast.
Yeah, so actually, I was going to say, I actually am in California now. So thank you so much, Chaya, for that introduction. And it's really great to be here with everybody. To be honest, I am a little bit nervous right now, but I'm very excited and just feel really honored to be on this panel with everyone. So I think, in terms of like what's weighing heavy on me, definitely the events of like last week. So like the March 15th, like deportations, the shootings in Atlanta. But I think in terms of like more recently, we just got news today about one of our community members who we've been working with very closely. So this is a Vietnamese community member that Mekong and Sea Defense have been working very closely with. So he's a community member who has been in detention, ICE detention up in Batavia. He had his trial yesterday, and we found out that like the judge denied his request for relief. And so, you know, I think in some ways we expected this, but just it's still really, you know, disappointing, really just like, you know, infuriating. And just like, you know, we had a meeting earlier with like, his lawyer and just like talked through like, you know, the implications of this. And so, you know, that's been weighing on me, and just like I think really thinking about also his like his wife and his 12-year-old daughter. So he has a family who's been waiting, you know, to see him, you know, to see him get out from like ICE detention. And so thinking about his like wife and his like daughter, and you know, I think that this is very much also connected to like, you know, what we'll be talking about a lot today, which is like, you know, the impact of like the gender-based impact of like, you know, detention and deportation, and how this especially affects like, you know, women and like children and like larger families. So but yeah, so that's been on my mind. But I guess in terms of, you know, what has brought me joy, so before this panel, I was gonna say mango because my parents bought like 2 crates of like mangoes. But I would have to say, you know, seeing everybody here, seeing like your beautiful faces is definitely beating that. So that's
Wait, green mangoes or sweet mangoes?
Sweet mango.
Oh. So she green, you know that with salt and pepper. Come
I know,
on.
but we had those like 2 weeks ago.
That's how we show love, is through food. So appreciate that very much. So thank you all so much, because I know that you know, as community organizers, as executive directors, as people who love our people, I hope that we know, you all know, and that people who are watching tonight know that we can sit in both, right? We can sit in the heaviness and we can also sit in the joy. And so find those moments wherever you find it. And so for folks who are just seeing this live and like, what is going on? I invite you to join us in this conversation tonight. And people who know exactly what you hear to listen on, and hear from the panelists and the Sheroes tonight. You know, this work started many, many years ago. And so in 2001, and you know, in 2001, like welfare reform hit us like a ton of bricks in the Bronx. So we were organizing, doing housing organizing, welfare rights organizing. And all of a sudden we heard that the secret repatriation agreement between Cambodia and the United States happened. And what that meant was that this agreement would tear our families apart once again. And this agreement again determined where our family was going to be, and yet again we will continue to be displaced. So it shook us to our core, because we knew that anything you know, our parents did everything possible to keep family and to keep each other safe, right? And so to keep each other alive and to keep each other together. Like, you all know, when we were growing up, they were like, you can't go there, you can't move out, because we want you really close to us. And so when that happened, I think we were really scared, but we said we are going to organize. And so we called in the Bronx a national strategy meeting of organizer. We're like, we're all the Southeast Asian organizer. And so when we put that call out, it was the first time that we all came together to like literally sit in our community's history, but also share with each other the strategies. It was like all the unicorns found each other. I mean, literally, it was like that. And so, you know, friends and organizers that came through have been my lifelong partners, and you know, the work of the Southeast Asian Freedom Network came to be at that moment. And so the increase in deportation is not new to our community. We all know, like, part of it is because of U.S. imperialism that got us here, that caused displacement in our community. And here we are in this country. and continue to be assaulted, where, like I said, the mention of the 1996 Immigration Reform Act, the Personal Responsibility Act, and what that meant. 1996 was incredibly harmful in so many ways, particularly to Black community, but also in our community, because you all know that if they're targeting Black community, we're also going to be targeted, right? And so I hope that sits with you and all a little bit around like how we landed here. And we'll talk a little bit later around what that work can possibly look like, what that solidarity work can look like. And, you know, I always say this to my Black organizers and comrade, like, we are actually alive because you named us in your civil rights work, and you named us, you actually, by your Rustin, actually went to the refugee camps to take our stories. And so, yes, our liberation is absolutely tied. And so we know that our lives depend on each other. And so when it happened in 1986, one of the things that came out of it was that everything became a felony. Everything became therefore deportable, and therefore and it was retroactive. And so we are. Folks have been out of incarceration for many years. We have cases that we worked on individually, organizationally across the country. You were incarcerated when you were 16, tried as an adult. This story is the same everywhere in our community. It may look a little bit different, right? But the stories of how we've come to this movement work is because of these laws that continue to jail people, right? And so we talk about, you know, war to refugee settlement, to resettlement, to the high school, to prison pipeline, to deportation. Like literally, we can actually map out how our people have experienced violence and have led to deportation. So with that, we are going to invite the panelists. The format is going to be really simple. We have 4 questions. And folks, you know, whatever moves you to answer, please do so. And I want this to be a general conversation, because you all know we be on those calls talking about strategy all day and all night. And yes, because we love each other and like need each other in the work, but really like the work, the tremendous work that I've seen, like that has really brought me joy, is to see how we like like we would do anything for each other, where it's 10 o'clock meetings or whatever it is. And so so I invite you all to the first question, and anyone can go first. And you know, if you want anything to add around the context, and I think your stories will also enlighten us in so many ways around how and so that's sort of how the movement was born. So I think the question naturally for me to all of you is, what brought you to this movement to end Southeast Asian deportation? And so anybody can go. This is not, you know, I'm not, don't make me choose. Don't make me choose. That will hurt my heart. So whoever want to come on, please join us.
Do you mind if I begin? Because as you were talking about your story, I was just thinking about where was I at that time. And because Bonta called me out as the OG, I think I'm going to own that OG-ness, right?
Yes, you have to.
I don't know how my lighting is too, but I feel like I'm a little bit dark. But I wanted to say that I actually learned about the 1996 immigration reform law in 1996 when I went to live in Washington, D.C. as a young executive director of a organization called the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. And at that time, our local communities were fighting welfare reform. Everybody was focused on welfare reform. Very few people were focused on 1996 reform, right? Immigration reform. But at that time was also, do you all remember? It was during the, the gang task force across the country, from San Diego to Minnesota to Wisconsin and maybe to the East Coast. I wasn't living there until later. And I already witnessed that my young Hmong brothers who sagged their jeans, hung out in a group, were identified and photographed as gang members, right? So I just want to tell you my timeline, because then when I lived in DC, one of my first communication with the Department of Immigration was a letter to say, I condemn deportation of refugees back to the countries of persecution. And so it was very interesting that happened that way. And so eventually, when I went to live and work in Thailand in a refugee camp with 15,000 Hmong people, I, took my R&R to Cambodia, and I had learned that there were a group of Cambodians who will return to Cambodia. So my husband and I made an effort to actually visit those first, I think it was less than 100 people at that time, and met many of them. A couple of them actually spoke Lao and said that they were actually ethnic Lao and Khmer. So my husband, who is Lao, was conversing with them, and he built this brotherhood with a group of folks in Cambodia. And so I feel like it's been a full circle for me, because when we were in DC in the 1990s, there was a case in Washington State that was fighting the detention, right? The indefinite detention, and he won. He's Cambodian. And so again, it's serendipitous for me, because now I'm sitting with my Khmer sisters and the Cambodian community. I would have to say, because of that case in Washington State, was the pioneering case, the trailblazer for stopping indefinite in detention of individuals that have immigration removal orders. And so that's how I came into the work. When I was still living in DC in 2000, I actually brought one of my cousins who has a deportation order to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Minnesota delegation there to advocate for himself. And so when I moved back here, he reminded me, he said, "Kayang, don't you remember I came and stayed in your apartment, and we went to the Congress, and you helped me lobby for my case." And so so much has happened. I mean, I think that there's been a lot of work that has been done through the movement. I admire my Cambodian community so much, because you're able to help return some of the individuals that were deported to Cambodia. You have developed the MOUs between Cambodia and the U.S., as well as the MOUs between to Vietnam and with the U.S. And just recently, this past year, 2019, we learned that the Trump administration was putting a lot of pressure on the Lao government to also accept former refugees to Laos as well too. And so again, I am back into the work because of this reason. And so I just want to share this with you, that my heart and my mind has been with your community for a long time, even though we have not met physically and until the last few years that we've been working together. So I'm really happy to sit here with you two from Washington State, because I really feel like that case was really a pioneering case for everyone who is not indefinitely detained should be thankful to that case. And I forget the name of the person, but
yeah,
I'm sure
it's Kim Ho Ma versus the United States.
That's right, Ma. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I forgot now. Yeah. So I feel like I am the OG, and
you are, own it. You literally just dropping bombs and stuff. So I'm just like listening here, like, yeah, I forgot about that, Kaying, and thank you for the reminder, because that when he won, that was actually when the U.S. went to swiftly do that, and so he basically said to the United States, like, you cannot detain. He was detained indefinitely because he couldn't be deported to any country, and so yes, absolutely. And so the legal work has been continuing, and so it's great to just acknowledge that your work and you condemning when you were in DC and all that stuff. And so absolutely, you are the OGs of OGs. You own it, you got it. I'm about to like wear t-shirts, sweaters, maybe get a tattoo of your name somewhere on my body. Other folks who wants to join the conversation, what brought you to this movement, Savang Manta and Soshi?
I think for me, it was about a little over 10 years ago when I was a director for a family resource center, and being the resource center was in a high Southeast Asian community. And families were coming in and actually asking for letters of support, and really asking for letters of support for their kids. And of course, I knew some of the families, because some of us were able to, provide some casework and social work support for them. And then, of course, Kaying mentioned CRAC. And at that time, CRAC was doing some outreaching work and really sharing a lot of documentaries about deportation. And we were able to just rally community members together. And there were a lot of community members that, really decided to come out and share their story. And unfortunately, I felt like the movement, it started, but then it slowly, it disappeared again. And so for me, I thought, okay, maybe that was because, we've achieved what we needed to achieve. And just being from the community and serving the community directly, it was more of what could I do with my capacity, right? And it was, again, just to help organize, help educate the community. And then, but really, I think the movement for me was in 2019, when there was a spike in deportation, and Sina Buntai and Manny Uch, who, of course, was fighting his deportation for 22 years, and actually this month just recently became a U.S. citizen. And so that was awesome. And of course, long. And so, we came together because we were being reactive, and like, you know what, we're not formally organized. We don't have all this stuff together, but guess what? What we know is that what is happening is not right. Right?
That's right.
We need to do something about it. And so basically that's what happened. I mean, we didn't have a toolkit. I mean, like right now, if you want to get started in organizing right now,
yes.
But you know what, Monta, everybody, like we all got a toolkit for folks. So we didn't have all that. And so that's really, how the movement started for me, is back then. But I think now it's more of, okay, we're reactive, but what we got to do now, we got to be proactive. And I think what hit me the most, where it became very, very personal for me, was when we had to support a female deportee. And that was so hard, because being a mom of 4 kids, just, I cannot imagine. I mean, how, like, if you had an ounce or a little tiny bit of compassion in your heart, right? Anyone who's out there, if you had just a little bit of passion in your heart, like, how could you allow this to happen? And so, I'm excited, because I feel like, being part of the, like the national organizing group now with all of you guys, that I think is really going to help us be more proactive and work towards like abolishing this just like inhumane, just horrible situation right now. So, but anyway, thanks. And that's really how we got involved, or I got involved.
Well, we're always so happy that you're involved with your full-time job and like getting on call late at night with us. And so appreciate that very, very much. And so this is anti-Asian violence, right? So like the deportation last week, the 33 Vietnamese folks that got deported, that's anti-Asian violence. And so we often think as anti-Asian violence as an individual act. And so again, Soshi and Manta, do you want to chime in to this question around how did you all come to this?
Sure, I can add. I think a lot of folks know the story of Minnesota 8 and how we started. You mentioned it when you read my bio as well. But, I think what's crazy is the fact that I didn't realize how much of an impact this would be in our communities, right? I remember first learning about deportations, you mentioned earlier, Chaya, because before the repatriation agreement of Cambodia with the United States in 2002, many folks were deported prior to that. And one of my nephew's father was deported in the very first wave in like 2000. And so even at that time, we didn't really understand a lot of that, or how the systems worked, or what you know, because for folks who are tuning in who aren't familiar with how folks can be deported in the first place, Chaya mentioned the immigration law that was passed in '96, and for our community members, folks are being exiled even after they have, you know, served their time, they've rehabilitated, and many people just face these automatic and mandatory detentions just because of this law. And most of us came here as refugees, and so for me, I came into this work because of the crisis that happened with folks in Minnesota. And one of them so happened to be my brother, and he came here as an infant. So many people have said, well, your parents are citizens, you know, you guys like look and you sound American, so why is this happening? And I just am so tired, especially right now, in explaining or having to explain the fact that like we did come as refugees, and it's because of the failed system here, and we're here because of, you know, the US being over there. And I think one of the things that I want to make sure that folks really understand too is that so many of these individuals, again, are being punished for old, like 30+ year convictions. And so we need to figure out a way to be able to just change this. And so I'm really excited about continuing to do the work with you guys. And when Savang, you know, you talk about the national work that we're doing collectively, you know, I think it's great that we've met with legislators, and legislators have, you know, put out statements and have, you know, talked about this, but they need to do more. And they need to, especially now that we have a new administration, even though Chaya, you mentioned last week, 33 of our Vietnamese brothers were deported. Like this is not okay, and it needs to stop. And so I think we need to just allow folks to really understand, and it's at your fingertips. Like go look it up, go see why this is messed up within our communities. And this is absolutely anti-Asian violence that's been happening for many, many years. And it's not just happening now. And the fact that people are treating us the way that they are right now just for fun is so messed up. But yes, deportation is something that we have been struggling with and going through for a really long time. And I've never organized before. And I do want to just add that before doing this, everything that I'm sharing is through my lived experience. I don't have accolades. I don't, you know, I was a high school dropout, and I just got my citizenship also last year because the past administration tried to screw me over. And so I can't wait till the pandemic is over so that I can go be international like Chaya and just like go change the world. And so, you know, really trying to bring our people back. And thank you, Kaying, for mentioning that, because I am so proud right now to be a Khmer woman and doing the work that we're doing to free our people and bringing them back. Because just 2 years ago, you know, that was a dream. I remember going out and speaking publicly about, and people would ask, what is your dream for your community right now? And for me, while my brother was being detained, shipped across all the states, it was really like to be able to have folks be returned and reunited with their families. And now it's happening, you know, so I'm just really thankful for that.
Thank you, Manta. Soshi?
Sure. So I think for me, in terms of like, you know, becoming part of like this movement work, I think it's maybe been like a little bit of a maybe longer path for me. So I think as Chaya was sharing earlier, so I have a legal background. I'm trained as a lawyer. And I spent the last 15 years working, focusing on policy advocacy. So specifically focusing on, you know, policies that affect, you know, low income, like communities of color and immigrant communities in New York, and specifically policies related to immigration and the criminal justice system and economic justice. I think I went down this path definitely based on like, you know, my family's experience, like our larger community's experience as like, you know, refugees, and then coming to this country and experiencing like ongoing like systemic barriers here, like, you know, poverty and like over criminalization. So I went down this path very much based on like, you know, I think my family and our community's like larger experience. But I wasn't quite sure about like, where I could work in terms of being able to directly like, work with and like serve like, the Southeast Asian community. And so for the last, 15 years, I've worked with like nonprofit organizations, worked with like New York City. But during this time, I also like learned about Mekong NYC. So I learned about Mekong in 2013. And since then, I've been part of the board. And I think, learning about Mekong has been really, really pivotal for me. It's been a really significant sort of moment for me. I think Mekong has been a home for me. It's been like a political home for me. So Mekong is just, I hold Mekong very deeply, very closely to my heart, and I can't quite.
You too. I got you right here, so she right here, like no, right here, girl.
So yes,
right
yes, Mekong is close to my heart. No, so
you might know.
So so this was very pivotal for me, and so in 2019 there was discussion within Mekong about starting up the Southeast Asian Defense Project. And so, the Southeast Asian Defense Project is very much the brainchild of Mekong. This has come out of the, anti-deportation organizing work that, Mekong has been doing. And so there was discussion at Mekong about, starting up the Southeast Asian Deportation Project. And I think that, in terms of like the political sort of like landscape, I think this was in 2019, at the height of like the Trump era as like, deportations were still ramping up, deportations were still continuing to affect our community. And I think, this was also in light of us seeing that like at the federal level, there were very few sort of like, remedies available that seemed like likely to move forward. And so there was a shift towards focusing on like local and state-based solutions. And I think, some of the solutions that we had seen, like, coming up within like the Southeast Asian organizing work that was successful was like, pardons and clemency, for example, and post-conviction relief. And so I think, given this sort of like climate where deportations were continuing to still take place within our community, that our community is still continuing to be targeted, that there were very few forms of relief available, and that folks were really focusing on like, local and state-based solutions, and there were some strategies that were coming up that were very successful, in different cases like from around the country. I think, this was part of the context of Mekong coming together and deciding to establish the Southeast Asian Defense Project. But I think also shore up, our resources and to bring together as many sort of like strategies as possible in fighting back against deportation. So I think, in 2019, the Southeast Asian Defense Project was established. And I think because of this, I had the opportunity to be able to step into this work and to join, everybody here who's been part of like, building this movement. And so that's how I ended up here, and I feel really grateful. So yeah.
So we like super honored, just so you know. So she's my lawyer too. When we at protest, I'd be like, so I can't get arrested today. So can you like tell them something? And so I'm like, lawyer up, so And so this is the Southeast Asian Deportation Movement, y'all. These are the women. These are the folks that's been in the front line all this time and all this year. And I just want to say how like one thing that dawned on me is like when we learn, we share. And so that is the power. And, I think like from, for our community who come from very patriarchal society that we're oftentimes not given the opportunity to have knowledge. And look what we can do with knowledge. We share. So just want to teach the men that lesson. So if y'all listening tonight, just so you know, don't just hold it to yourself, but really share. And so the women as Sheroes tonight really reflects that. And so I am like always like hyped up when I'm around them. And vice versa, right? And so we're gonna do another round of questions. I know like it's almost 9:00. I think there are some questions that people are posing on Facebook, but there's a lot of love, y'all. I don't know if you've seen it. A lot of love for all of you all tonight as well. And so I'm like trying to figure out where to go with this. But so I just talked a little bit around like why it is that you see 5 women in your screen. I mean, you welcome, but also, it speaks true to the core of this movement and to the core of our people and our family. And so I want to ask you all, and not all of you have to answer. Again, I would love to hear from all of you. Why is this a gender justice issue? And I think some of y'all alluded a little bit to what it may be, and I would love for all of you to expand. So any one of you want to go first? Why is this a gender justice issue?
I'll just share something very short about it, and then you all can add. But for me, I just think about, like, for instance, my organization, right? We started, grassroots women and queer led, and we were fighting for 8 men. And then we think about some of the men that we continue to support and continue to help, how we work our butts off to support them and get them out here, and yet they still come out and they're still doing the same thing. Kaying mentioned earlier around the three women in the Hmong community who were just killed, and they were killed by their partners, right? And in the Hmong community, and I'll have Kaying maybe add to that, but a lot of them end up turning into murder suicides, in much kind of like, a couple of the individuals, over this past week. But I think that that's the really hard thing, is that you see a lot of times it's the women and the queer folks who are out in the front lines fighting for these men that are being picked up and deported. And so that's really all I wanted to just add. But it's really hard because the work for this is just so much labor, and we are just drained, and we just want to really be appreciated, and I feel like there's a lot of lack in that.
Appreciate you, Manta, very, very much. Just so you know, even if they don't appreciate us, we appreciate you and appreciate yourself. And so I hope you feel that and know that every day. Savan, Kaying, Soshi.
I think I shared earlier about the individual that we helped and how she was a mom, but she was also a victim of domestic violence, and sort of what led her into the criminal justice system as well. But it all started with domestic violence, and I just really want the work in supporting her was definitely different from the work that in supporting the men, right? And so and it was just, I felt like for women it was looked down upon even more, and that was really hard to see from coming from the community. And so I just sort of wanted to share that we fight for our men, but we also have to fight hard for our women as well. So I just want to bring that up.
Thank you, so
Chaya, the first time I really thought about the gender piece was actually watching Release Minnesota 8. That was all women, their mothers, their daughters, their aunties who were fighting for those 8 men. And the impact that it had on the women and the rest of the family, because one individual had a removal order or is incarcerated. And so that was the first time I came to that realization, because before that I was just thinking, I'm the executive director of this organization. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm fighting for my community. I didn't think of myself as a woman. I didn't think of those individuals as men, even though it's predominantly male, right? Because our men are being massively incarcerated, and that the system and racism, manifests itself in our men by incarceration, like Black men and brown men. The racism against us is and women is different, right? And the patriarchy, misogyny on us is different. And so when we become leaders and movement, leaders, I think we lead with our heart more than with our intellect. But we are using our intellect and our education to free our men and our community. And I think this is the difference between male leaders and female leaders, right? Because we do lead with our heart, and we don't care if it's a male person who has been incarcerated, because we understand that they have rights as well too, because they have served their time. The second time that I realized that it was gender there was a gender, justice piece to it, is because I have a couple of cousins who have removal orders, and who is visiting them in the prison constantly? It's the mothers and the sisters, right? Who is writing letters of support for these men? Mothers and sisters, right? Even it's hard to get the uncles to write letters of support. It's hard to get the male leaders in our community to write letters of support, because they would say, well, no, these guys committed a crime. I can't put my name out there and jeopardize my own reputation for them. But none of us even think twice about doing that. I'm like writing letters of recommendation for everybody, if they need it and I can leverage my power and influence to do that, I'll do that, right? And so I just feel like I haven't done enough thinking and reflection on this, but there is a huge gender justice, gender equity, and gender justice led movement that we need to really credit to. And I'm hoping that as we have this conversation, as people are sitting out there, that they do appreciate their wives, their partners, and their moms, because at the end of the day, they're going to need these women in their lives to help liberate them from whatever situation they're in. And I think that this is the message of what a Shero is and what Sheroism should be. And so I want to say that I need some time to think more about this, but I do think that the impact of one individual male person has a huge impact on the whole family. And that this is why systems need to be much more thoughtful about how we incarcerate, men and women in our society, and the burden and cost, to the community, right? At what cost, will we continue to do this to communities of, color and, a generation of children, right? So I'm sorry it's not as smooth as it is in my mind, but I just wanted to at least say this to you, that this has been my lived experience, is that I've got out of my on the limb for others, and I hope that when it's our turn, they will also come to the
That's right.
sacrifice whatever they can too, right? So
thank you, Kaying. Beautifully put. Don't even go there. Soshi, do you have anything to add?
I think that Kaying and Monta and Savon covered it beautifully. So I think they covered it. Yeah.
I mean, who's still sending you money, right? So it's all those questions, like who still got you? And so I want to share this, that it has always been the women, the queer folks, and the young people fighting for the men. And so we hope they fight as hard as they do that we fight for them. And I think one moment for me where I had such a change of heart and mind reaction when we were in Cambodia, and we were organizing and meeting with the deportees, and it dawned on us that as the wives and mother was still sending the money, they were having extramarital affairs over there and accepting the money and things like that. And so we had to come to term also that if we are going to free you and bring you back home, is not for you to continue to create violence in our life, right? Not at the expense of us. And so I hope that the men who are watching understands that you have work to do, because we fight for you really hard. And so go hug your mom, go say sorry to your sister, whatever you need to do. That's a start, right? Kaja taught me that. And so I know that folks have a lot of questions that are coming up as well. So a question, I think, Monta, you're going to take this one, I hope. So as a Southeast Asian community member, what would you recommend to our families and friends when they are on the deportation list or has an expired green card? So Monta is our community lawyer. Go ahead, Monta.
Full discretion, I am not an attorney.
I know. Yes.
But just through my lived experience, I can share that, I think the reason why Minnesota 8 was successful in releasing three of the 8 is because of just our strategies. And, again, we were a group of women that had never organized before. And we were able, though, to very quickly get our communities together and reached out to attorneys right away that understood the intersection of crimmigration, which is criminal and immigration, like interconnected. But we didn't know that. We didn't know what that term was. I think at that time was when we finally discovered what this word was. But really it's helping your families be proactive in gathering, like what Gaying said earlier, is helping them to narrate their stories, right? Helping them to gather as many documents as they can from doctors, from like if they're going through therapy, grabbing all of those things, helping them to collect their criminal records, and then a FOIA request, which is the Freedom of Information Act. So you can request your immigration records through not USCIS, because there's two different types of FOIAs. And there's organizations like Minnesota 8, or the folks that are on here that you could go to that can help you gather these things and kind of guide you on the steps that you need to take to be able to do that. And I think also when you're looking for attorneys, really understand that you don't want to just give money to any attorney. Even though they could be a really amazing immigration attorney, you don't want to make the same mistake that like my brother did. We want to make sure before he was represented by the attorney that helped him to be released. But, when they don't understand our refugee status, that's also an issue. There are some different, there are just some different types of experiences that they know more than, and not to like knock any other attorneys, but I think our refugee status is a lot different than just most immigration cases. So I would say, make sure you're helping your families gather documents, writing support letters from them. Look at their criminal records. It may be a time where folks are really ashamed and maybe they haven't looked at their records in a really long time. Most of us forget things. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are cases from like 30 years ago. So really going to pull their records, you can get them. Even if they're not like digital and they were from many, many years ago, they're somewhere. They're in some sort of a vault somewhere, and you can get that, because the worst thing that you can do is not find everything and then all of a sudden it comes back up. Another thing too is like around the expired green card, for instance. If you have an expired green card and you know that, because there's a difference, like whether you're on a deportation list or not, I think that's kind of tricky. So there's a difference between like just getting a notice to appear or like an NTA. If you just received a notice to appear, you can actually have an attorney help you before you get issued a final order of removal. So really just making sure that they do actually have a deportation order. And then if they've ever been in contact with the law and they have that expired green card, make sure you go see an attorney before you go and renew your green card. A lot of folks either go try to get their citizenship or renew their green card, and then they get screwed up, and that's when they're flagged for deportation. And then they're given like this order of supervision or the notice to appear. When they go and appear, that's when they're issued, like they don't understand it, they go alone, and then they sign for it, and then they're issued a final order of removal. So I would just say, if you've ever been in contact with the law and you're considering getting citizenship or renewing, make sure you seek an attorney for help. And there's organizations like all of ours here. In fact, in Minnesota right now, there are 250 legal kiosks. It's a project here in Minnesota. Minnesota 8 has a legal kiosk in our office. CAL, the Coalition of Asian American Leaders, which Gaying is a part of, also has a legal kiosk. And our kiosk specifically, we're partnering with nonprofit attorneys that we've been part of these conversations with a bunch of legal experts that understand the intersection. And so we are providing free immigration legal advice and screening services through these legal kiosks. So if you are in Minnesota or your case is from Minnesota, you can definitely reach out to either CAL or Minnesota 8, and we can help do the beginning part of it to see if you can get free legal advice through these legal providers who are experts in crimmigration. So yeah, I didn't mean to like give a shout out there, but it made sense to share it, because that's like actually one of the first steps that folks need to take, is get yourself a reputable attorney that actually does immigration work within the Southeast Asian community.
Manta, you don't have to be humble because lawyers are learning from you. So just saying, you know that from experience. And so thank
Right.
you
When we
for
were on that panel and they were like, "Are you
thorough.
sure you're not an immigration attorney?" It
And you
matters.
always have to do these disclaimers, and I'm just like, oh my God, Mata.
I have
No.
to. I could get in trouble. I'm not an
I
attorney.
know, I'm just
Right?
joking.
Right, Sochi?
So she don't litigate, all right? Don't be don't
I don't litigate.
just kidding. Kanye Savan, do you have anything to add to that, Soshi? To that question? I mean, Manta beautifully um described the process. And
Yeah,
so,
I think I'm not sure what other states are like, but here, if you
mm,
are in detention and you have a removal order, some of the legal organizations do represent and will go into the detention centers wherever you are detained. And if your family member is in a detention center, they should request an attorney. So we do have some pro bono legal clinics here that go into those systems to help individuals. So I want to just add that, but I will put our Cal's. Okay, Cal's information is already on there. So yes, definitely calling us. Our staff that works on this issue is Jenny Saray. But I want to just also mention that, when the Hmong community started hearing that they were going to be, possibly returned to Laos, they were all like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do? No one has ever helped us before." I said, "Well, the Vietnamese and Cambodians have been through this, right? So we can learn from them." And a lot of work has been done since 1996, to understand the legal aspect of it as well as the policy aspects of it. I want to, for those of you who are not from Laos, because Laos refused to take anybody, that many of the Hmong and Lao communities, Kamumian, were just living in limbo for the last 20 some years. And so they thought they could never be deported, but it doesn't make life any better because you have this hanging over your head, right? And so I think that when we found out that Laos may be accepting people, I think there was a huge panic and anxiety in our community. And we've been pointing them to the Cambodian experience and the Vietnamese experience to say, build on these movements. You don't have to start from zero. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of people are already doing this work. And so I want to kind of shout out to that the Cambodian movement and the Vietnamese movement, and that we need to work with these communities and not just work on our own. Even though each of our experience is very different, right? But that we can, in this country, understand the policies of this country a little bit better.
I mean,
sure. Go ahead.
Here in Washington, with the Khmer Anti-Deportation Advocacy Group, we belong to a network with lawyers and attorneys, for example, like the Northwest Immigration Rights Project. But what I want to say is reach out to any of us, and guess what? We will make sure we connect you. If you are in California, I'm sure we'll connect you to someone in California. I mean, we all are all connected to this in this work, and so we'll make sure that we, make that connection.
Thank you so much. That was actually one of the question folks had around just like, how do we get involved? And in some states, what we find too is like, we know there's a lot of cases in the South, but there's not really many organizations. And so, part of this tonight is like, if you are in the South, or if you in a city or a town or a state that don't have organization that can support you, like definitely reach out to whether it's the Southeast Asian Freedom Network, CAGE, CAL, Minnesota AAC Defense, or Mekong. Like, I think too, like, you don't have to start from zero, and so, and particularly because we're moving into a national strategy, we're hoping that all of you can be part of that and get involved. And so I won't go into that strategy because it's like an hour conversation itself, but it is deeply inspiring, and I know it's going to change the hearts and minds of our people. So places that don't have organization that are here tonight again, and that you want to organize, like reach out to one of the folks here, because we need to vibrate nationally, international, and all of that. And so I will move to. I think so. There's some more questions. Are there? Thank you to I just want to give a round of applause to the tech people, the back people that is making this happen tonight. like and making sure that we like, hey, 5 minutes up and things like that. Appreciate those kinds of labor so very much. So thank you for that. Okay, we're good. All right. Next, and maybe this is we are coming to sort of a close, and so I wanted to um offer and say like how like as you're all speaking, I'm learning still. We've been in this work for so long, and Kaying, you and I may be the OGs, but there's so many OGs to come, and so we look forward to that. And so my last question, or my last sort of round for all of you, and again, I want to remind people that we sit in our pain, but we also sit in our joy. And so all of that. So we bring all of that to this movement, into our families and our communities across the country tonight. We know it has not been easy. It has never been easy for anyone. It has never been easy to live under white supremacy across the world, across the country, and especially within the United States, as we see from the indigenous folks of this country, as well as the Black folks that's been here. And so my last question, as we're going to try to inspire some people, okay, because we need folks to start organizing on the ground, and again, it's two parts. Whichever one lands on you, whichever one your spirit take to, I invite you to do that. And so two questions, and again, anyone or both was welcome to. What is needed from us right now, right? What is needed from all of us right now, and what are you most hopeful for? So again, it's what do you think is needed from all of us right now, and what are you most hopeful for? It's a
I know y'all ain't shy. Not like
it's deep. They think it's deep, yeah. Y'all. It's deep, a deep question. So I appreciate the silence too, Manta.
Well,
so then, are you ready to answer? Which one is calling out to you?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the big things that we need right now is just everybody's support. I also want folks to know that, like, I think the big thing that we're going through in this current time is that we can be in solidarity with each other as Southeast Asians or API folks in the movement to liberate our folks, but then also remembering that even though we're fighting to stop deportation or fighting to stop the anti-hate, that we cannot be anti-Black within, the work that we're doing, right? And so that is one thing. Also, organizations such as like Cage, Minnesota 8 is beginning to get some funding, but like support us, donate to our organizations, all of our organizations, because it takes a lot of labor to do this work. And for an organization like ours, who's been doing it for a volunteer basis for the last 3 years, it feels good to be able to finally get some funding to be able to do the work. And one of the things that I'm most hopeful for right now is, yes, our national strategy, so that we can make big changes happen. And like your vision and dream, Bongchaya, to show up in DC with so many Southeast Asians, right? But really also to free our people and give them the opportunities to come back. We have folks returning now, but I want to see more. I want to see the Hmong and Laotian folks who have been deported returned. I want to see the Vietnamese folks returned. And yeah, just being able to really be in solidarity and bringing our folks back.
Fire, Manta, fire.
I guess I could go next. So I completely agree with Manta. I think in terms of like what's needed, like, when I think about the work that we're all doing together, like it's movement building, but I think it's also like building out like the structures to be able to like sustain this work. And so I think what's really fundamentally needed is just, I think, resources and like, I think really funding, like to, to be able to support this work. So, and I think that, I think unfortunately, like our community has been invisible, and this is, I think, in terms of like the nonprofit world, fundraising world, this is another way that we have been invisible too. But I think, in building out this movement, I think that's one key sort of like thing that we need, which is like the resources to be able to like continue doing this work and to be able to sustain this work. I think in terms of like what makes me hopeful, I think when I think about like the organizing work that's being done within our community, I think I guess like I think there's like three things that really stand out to me. I think there's like this sense of solidarity of like, fighting for liberation for our people, but also fighting for liberation for like, other communities who are similarly situated. I also think about how, there's like such a strong emphasis on lifting up those who are like the most oppressed. I also had a third one and it completely slipped my mind. And I'll say that for now. So I think, there's intersectionality. I think I think this movement is really strongly defined by like, intersectionality. I think it's a really strong grounding for like this movement. And so like, I think these three sort of like, values, like I think, intersectionality, lifting up those who are like, the most like, marginalized, and then like solidarity, I feel like are really sort of like defining values of like this movement. And to know that, like, I feel like it's like the embodiment of like, liberation and true liberation. So, and I guess that, gives me a lot of like hope and gives me a lot of optimism. So, yeah.
Yes, to all of that.
I can go. Everything that Monta and Soshi has said about the supporting the organizations that is in our community, but I want to speak directly to the ones that have impacted, who are impacted. Love yourself, right? And if you want to be liberated, you need to talk to us and be engaged in your own case and tell your story. Don't be ashamed. There are hundreds and thousands of people who've been incarcerated. What you did back then is not who you are right now, and so you cannot be ashamed of that. You have to speak up. I'm learning that all the legal things, all your records are not who you are, and if you don't speak up, then people don't see the human side of you, right? And we need to humanize you and your family, and so you have to love yourself by speaking up and fighting for yourself, so that we can find ways to strategize and work with you as well too. My second message is that love yourself by starting to love the women in your lives, your mothers and your wives and your partners who are fighting for you day in and day out. And it's really important to do that. I think for my Hmong community, I want to say that, we don't have to do this by ourselves. There are so many allies and partners out there. We should collaborate and, link arms with others so that we can fight this collectively. This is not about you. It's a system that we're fighting, and we can't break through that system, dismantle it, unless we do it together as a collective. I know each of our country is slightly different, but in this country, they only see us as the same, right? And so we need to work together. And it's not just about solidarity, but it's because we love each other. I mean, we all came as refugees, and so we need to figure out what that pathway for us is in the future. So these are my only three messages that I wanted to say to the rest of the group. I want to share my email in here for Mindy and others who ask how to get involved. There are so many ways to do it. And if you're in the Minnesota area or elsewhere, feel free to contact me. Many of the Hmong folks that called us from Oklahoma, Georgia, North Carolina, they didn't have resources in those areas. They called us, and like Soshi had said, we then introduced them to other people. I also want to say, when we first released the news about Laos wanting to take back people, possibly taking back people, we probably had like 200 phone calls. The majority of them were women calling about their husbands, and mothers crying on the phone saying they didn't want their sons to be deported. I didn't hear any men call about their wives or their daughters who may be deported. And there are women who have deportation order as well too. So again, let's think about our community. Let's change the way that we've been doing things in the past. Yeah.
Can I just add real quick to what Kaying said? When we had those like 200 plus calls, it was crazy because we would be on those phone calls for like 45 minutes to an hour, and a lot of the women didn't really even know. They just knew that they had the final orders and they were afraid. But that's the thing, is like, love yourself. Really, yes, it's something that it doesn't define who you are, but don't be ashamed. You must call us if you need that support. That's the only way we're able to help and be proactive.
I think for me, I just want to ditto all of my sisters that just spoke. And again, just reiterate that we definitely need resources. It's just crazy how people just expect for us to do this type of work for free. No, you know what? We need resources, and guess what? Money is only an issue in the absence of value. And you know what? Let's value this work and value what we do, because I mean, this is this is a life and death situation, right? And we and it impacts family. And then the second thing is, yes, do not be afraid to come out, be proactive. If you've had a record before, be proactive. Do exactly what Monta provided. The advice that you gave was amazing, and do that. And I think what happened with us is sometimes we would get cases when folks are already in the detention center, or already about to be deported. And so that just and that's why we're asking, be proactive. And yes, let's support one another and get the word out to the community. So for folks that are on this live stream right now, what you learned today, take it out and bring it out to your community, your neighbors, your friends. Bring it out and share, because the more that folks know that they're, so they can be proactive, I think it makes the job a little bit, it's not easy, but just a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you all so much tonight to take in such an amazing panel. I can hear, I can listen and talk to you all day, all night. You know that already. And so I think a few things that really stood out for me. One, definitely, I'm glad that Freedom Inc. folks are putting everyone email on the list. Yes, donation, links, get involved. And I think this work is like, this is our work in this lifetime, right? And so I know that, people have shared like they've been here 10 years, 15 years, 13 years. This is a lifelong commitment to social justice, to loving each other, to radical love. And I think other things that folks have said that I wish, like these are quotes that could be on t-shirt, y'all, just so you know, like we have to fight the fight like our life depended on it. Love our people uh, like our life depended on it. And that we're not just trying to end deportation for Southeast Asian, we're trying to end deportation for all, because this system does not see our humanity, does not see our dignity, and so our work in the Southeast Asian movement has always been at the intersection of healing and organizing, right? And so I want us to hold close to those words, because we know that that the deportation of our people is the ultimate failure of the refugee resettlement program, and that deportation is anti-Asian, but most importantly, that white supremacy kills, right? And so I hope that you look tonight, and I will remind all of you again, look to your left, to your right, who's in the kitchen, who's at home, who is the babies and the mamas and the sisters. They're your shero. And so you might be listening to all of us tonight. And so we've been called on by Freedom Inc. and been given that title. But I hope that you see those everyday sheroes in your life. Our kids, our daughters, our aunts. And so I hope you honor them in this process. And most importantly, get involved in the work. Build a movement, be part of it. Come, join us. And hopefully, we free ourselves and each other and every other communities, because again, white supremacy kills. I want to say good night to everyone, and thank you to all of our panelists. Manta, you look beautiful. Soshi, likewise. Kaying, the green chakra heart is the color of, the heart. Savang, thank you. Get some rest. I know that don't come far. And again, I hope you find joy this weekend, and that you remind yourself that you are absolutely appreciated and loved,
And so have a good night. And until soon, everyone.